Well, welcome back to the Ropes Family Podcast. I look forward to saying that every time just because it's like my radio announcer voice. Welcome back to the Ropes Family Podcast. You can tell it's summer and I haven't talked to people in a while. Just my children. So today we're going to be talking about family worship time. So this is a little strange thing. So what is family worship?
I think family worship is time spent together in the Word or just discussing Jesus together. As a family.
Yeah, and so it's different than like your personal devotional time that we're supposed to have. We're supposed to be spending time with Jesus, reading the Bible, praying, and growing in our faith. But this is kind of an extension of that, as if doing this as a family. So why should we do family worship? What do you think? Why we should do it?
I think that it's time you can spend together, obviously, and then it's an example to our kids on how they should grow up and how they should stay in the Word even as adults. Mm-hmm. Because I know that me personally, I was great in when my parents made me go to church. Mm-hmm. And, elementary through high school, I was great. Mm-hmm. I would stay connected, and then I went to college. Yes, I went to a Christian college, but yeah, I didn't stay in the Word. I went to my Bible classes. I went home. I didn't. But I think that had I spent more time with my family in the Word and stuff, I would have been better prepared to spend time with Jesus by myself. Mm-hmm. So I think that spending time as a family, just learning about stuff in the Bible or just discussing problems and how Jesus can help us is a big thing.
Yeah, and just kind of experiencing faith along with your family, just to kind of realize like it's not just a you thing that you have to have this relationship. I mean, you do have to have a relationship with Christ, but it's not something that's endured alone or taught, or you don't have to learn it by yourself. Mm-hmm. Growing up, we didn't have a family worship time. We went to church, and that was about it, And this is different, and the reason why I really wanted to talk about it is because it's summertime and we don't really have like our regular church things going on. I mean, we have like camps and things like that, VBS, but we don't have regular Wednesday night stuff. And so our kids are kind of missing out on those things. And so we need to focus and make sure that we as a family are making sure our kids are spiritually led somewhere and spiritually digging in the Word or something, just to make sure that, that they're not, that you don't lose that, I guess, momentum. Momentum's not the right word, but, stay on track with it, keeping it in a routine.
Well, I talk about the summer slide for school.
Yeah.
Can you have it for your faith if you don't stay in the Word? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, you can, faith takes practice. We've talked about it a lot. You've got to keep it up and keep it going. You don't want to, I mean, it's not like God's going anywhere, but you still don't want to, it's the same thing of like if you don't see a family member for a couple weeks, you're not quite as close. You got to do the catch up. Mm-hmm. Hey, how have you been? How's things going? I haven't talked to you in a while. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with God. You still want to have that relationship. You still want to be digging in the Word. And the reason why I think that it's important is one verse that we've talked about a bunch in a bunch of podcasts. And I think this is kind of my philosophy. I think I've said this. My philosophy on life and family ministry is Colossians 3:16. Let the word of Christ dwell within you richly, teaching and admonishing one another and singing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, and to bring glory to God. I think that's from memory. That's pretty close. But like we as a family, we've talked about it in a church setting. We want the word of Christ to dwell within the church richly. We want it to dwell within our hearts richly. We also want the word of Christ to dwell within our families richly, and so we can take that word and go out and sing psalms, hymns, and teach and admonish each other. And I also want to look at Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 9. And this is God. Basically, he just gave the Moses the 10 commandments, and then he says, this is the greatest commandment. It says, let's see, where am I at here? It says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words that I commanded you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them on the sign as the sign on your hand, and they shall be the frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So this goes along with Colossians 3:16. But the big verse that I think that sticks out that God's commanding is in verse 7. It says, "You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise." That's literally God telling us you need to teach my word to your children. God calls us as parents to be the main disciplers of our kids. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the method. I think that's the whole purpose of a family. Mm-hmm. Because they're right there. You don't have to necessarily go on the other side of the world to make mm-hmm. disciples. You've got people to make disciples mm-hmm. right there in your house.
I read a thing yesterday that said, look around at your kids and just remember that God picked them out for you. Mm-hmm. Like, those are yours for a reason. Mm-hmm. Whatever reason that may be. I mean, you have them to disciple. You have them to show the way to.
Yeah. And if you're struggling, like, I don't know where to start with this, these two passages that we just talked about, these kind of lay the groundwork of where to start. It's just about digging into the word. It's one of those things. You just got to be in the word, and the word's not going to fall void, right? Mm-hmm. But there's practical ways to do this. So how do we do family worship? How do you do it?
So we aren't always very consistent with this, mm-hmm. but when we're doing good, mm-hmm. we will start with evenings before bed because mm-hmm. they're all hyped up. And so we have to calm down, refocus. Mm-hmm. And so we'll read a Bible story, which one of the kids usually picks out, usually Allie. And then we talk about it. Mm-hmm. And the kids usually have really good questions, because I was kind of nervous about that. Like, what if they ask something I can't answer? Mm-hmm. Well, I tell them to go ask Donovan, just so you know. But they have really good questions about it, or they'll say, "Ooh, I didn't know," whatever. And then they'll say, "What about, if I act like that?" And I'm like, "Well, here's what happened to this person," or, mm-hmm. It's been really good. And then we always pray, and they love prayer requests. Mm-hmm. It's fun for them. So That's how we do it. We do not sing. I know we've talked about that. I don't sing. Ben doesn't sing. He can play the guitar, but he can't sing. So we don't sing.
I mean, it's not necessarily required to sing. We do it differently too. Like, my kids are young. Most people know my kids. If we get a quiet 3 minutes, something bad is going on. So what we do is when we go to bed, I'll go sit on the kids' floor, because the kids kind of share a room right now, and I'll sit on the floor and I'll read them. Basically, I'll open the Bible app on the phone, and every day it has like a verse of the day, mm-hmm. and you can go in and you can select to read the full chapter of the verse. And so I'll basically just read the passage that verse is in, and then I'll pray, and then we'll go to sleep. And sometimes, like last night, for instance, we were reading in Romans 8, and it was talking about the Spirit dwelling within us. And after I read that and prayed, Emerson said, "Daddy, what was that word that you said about something?" And I said, "Dwell." And she said, "Yeah." And she said, "What does that mean?" And I said, I got the opportunity to share when you place your faith in Jesus, His Spirit comes and dwells within you. It comes and lives inside of you. And that kind of sparked a little bit more conversations. And this mm-hmm. is right before bed, so she can have kind of like the night to wind down, thinking mm-hmm. about how the Spirit can dwell within her when she places her faith in Christ. And, like, just little things. You don't know what kids are going to pick up necessarily.
Right.
And so I'm just kind of letting the Word just do its work on the kids. Like, I'm not necessarily explaining everything. Mm-hmm. You have older kids, so It's kind of good to explain, like, hey, this is the context of these mm-hmm. things.
We just kind of let them ask questions too, because I'm obviously not a Bible scholar, but when they start asking questions, that's when we start answering.
And it's good to unpack it all together. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know exactly. Let's kind of take a deeper look and look at what this means. I wanted to talk about where you can start. You can do exactly what I do, unless you want to kind of go a little bit farther. On the Bible app, they do a basically a daily refresh. You can go through the whole thing. It's kind of like an Instagram story, but you can skip where the influencer on there is kind of explaining their take. But there's a devotional that goes along with the verse of the day every day. You can kind of read through that devotional as a family, and then you can pray and do all the things. And if you want to sing a song, if you can, sing a song. It's great, whatever. You don't have to. Or, you can just kind of start in John 1:1, where it says, in the beginning, the Word was God and the Word was with God. You can just start there and kind of go through a whole passage a day or a verse a day, or I'd recommend doing more than just a verse a day, but go through maybe a chapter a day and kind of talk about it. Just depending on each family's different, and kind of what you guys want to talk about and how much time you have. There's not like a set amount of time that you have to spend doing it, right? You can, it can take 5-10 minutes.
I was going to say it's probably going to vary by day.
Yeah, and we're busy. Everybody's busy. Even in summer, you're really busy. You're my schedule is not really a schedule. It's just trying to do things when I can.
Mass chaos.
Yeah, it's mass chaos all the time. So we're trying to figure out, like, it's hard to establish a rhythm during the summer just because, it's summertime. I also thought, like, when our times, like our time is right before bed, but you can also do it during dinner. We tried this before. We bought a 365 dinner devotions. It didn't work with us because, you guys know my kids. They're not going to be able to pay. We can barely get them to eat their food. We need to. It's hard to have that conversation, to keep it going, to get a gospel conversation going when you're yelling at your kid to eat their green beans. And
I talked to someone yesterday that said it's too hard with teenagers because they're never home. Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't experienced that yet because mine's 12. My oldest is 12 and he can't go anywhere without me. But I was thinking, would it be better when they get older like that to set a time? Like, you're going to be home by 9. I mean, not during sports. When they're out playing with their friends. You're going to be home by 9. And at 9, we're going to do our family devotional. That sounds really good to me, but I haven't been there yet. So
I think it's about making it a priority. Like there's nothing that's going to be more important in our household than this. And I know that's kind of strange to say, like, your kids are going to come home and go to bed eventually, but you need to make it a priority for your kids. Like, if you're not making it a priority, they're not going to make it a priority for their kids, or down the line, or in their own personal time. Parents, we have a responsibility to it's like in Deuteronomy 6:7. It says, "You shall teach them diligently." We as parents are commanded to diligently do this. And it's not just something that we shouldn't be flippant about it. We should do it. And are we perfect? I'm not perfect at it. We have to do things within our family dynamic, but it has to be a priority for us. It has to be. If you want to raise spiritually sound children, it has to happen. You have to be teaching them. You have to invest in them. And I always sound like a crotchety old man when it comes to extracurriculars, but I'm not. Like, we have Emerson's in competitive cheer. But the thing that when we were signing her up, Allison and I talked about, is that we can't let her faith, our faith, be run by our cheerleading schedule or whatever, our sports schedule, our extracurriculars. What has to come first is our faith and our relationship with Jesus as a family and personally. And so you just have to take a stand at some point. You can't, because you can extracurricular your life away, right? And you think all these things are good. We've talked about these things. All these things are good, but they can't replace your faith in Jesus. Because if you don't have your faith in Jesus, none of this is going to matter down the road. Right. I mean, for it might be good for your life on earth, but if you don't have your faith in Jesus, where are you going after your life? Right. So it's so important that we establish good faith habits in our families now.
My friend sent me something last week that said there's 0.01% chance your kid's going to be a professional athlete, and there's 100% chance he's going to meet Jesus. Yeah. That was like a shot to the heart there. I
know, and that sounds like, we've all kind of heard that before, like cliche, but like it's a big deal. Like, it's not it's not like it's not something we can just worry about later.
Right.
Oh, we can just worry about that later. Because like you said, you got into college and you didn't make it a priority. Right?
No.
And I didn't either. I didn't make homework a priority in college, and that's why I'm still in it. Like it's, like I didn't have things. I didn't have someone to make sure I was keeping things in priorities. I was kind of doing things on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just now learning how to do this as a 30, almost 32-year-old man trying to lead his family. I'm just now learning how to do this as well. And so it just kind of takes consistency. And the next question that I have is, what if it's hard? It will be hard.
It's going to be hard.
Just like establishing any other rhythm in your life or adjusting to any other new schedule, it's hard. Mm-hmm. There's going to be days when your kids are not into it. Mm-hmm. The other day, we were trying to sit down or get ready to go to bed, and the kids were not. They were nowhere near anywhere to have any kind of me reading the Bible to them because they were too wound up, ready to go. I was trying to get them calm, and I lost my cool. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do this anymore. If we can't sit still for 10 minutes, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then I was immediately convicted, like, well, you need to keep doing it. It's going to be hard. You're going to lose your patience, but,
I sent one of mine to his own room the other day.
Yeah.
You're not part of this anymore. Go. And I was like, I just kicked him out of Bible study. You can't kick someone out of here. So I called him back in there, but I was like, chill. You got it. You have to chill.
Got to relax. Yeah. I mean, and there's parenting that goes on. And, you may not even realize that your kids are picking up on the things. Like, I didn't think Emerson was going to pick up on dwell.
Right.
I didn't think she was going to pick up on that. But she did. And she, it brought up a conversation. And then even Elliot will kind of riff off of Emerson's questions. Elliot will ask questions. Like, his questions are, well, what do you mean? How did God make the trees? I know I use that example, but it's basically every day he asks how God makes the trees. He just doesn't get it. Or he asked, how did God make the moon yesterday? And I said, well, same way you made the earth. You just said, here, make it, it's here.
Yeah.
And the same thing with light. We talked about suns and stars, and all from Emerson asking what's dwell mean.
That's cool, though. That's a big conversation to have.
Yeah. And
with little kids.
Yeah. And like kids, their imaginations are huge, and it's kind of cool. And Emerson's been asking a lot of, faith questions, like I told her the other day that, the Holy Spirit will start working on her heart. And she asked, when is he going to start doing that? I said, well, you can ask him. You can ask him to start working on your heart. And, and just kind of, she said, okay. Just kind of getting her mind thinking and her spirit thinking, and stuff like that. And the other thing is, I want to encourage parents, like, spiritual formation doesn't happen overnight. Like, your kid's not going to be a perfect Christian, a perfect Christ follower just because you start doing this overnight. Like, they're not going to establish this habit today, and the example of that is I'm still working on establishing this habit, and so are you, and so are a lot of other parents. Like, we're constantly working on our spiritual formation. And the other thing about spiritual formation is it doesn't stop. We'll be working on our spiritual formation until we die. It's one of those things, like, we're constantly going to be formed. God's constantly going to be shaping us into who he wants us to be. But we just need to make sure we're consistent in being obedient and following his word, letting his word dwell within us and teaching it to our kids.
My whole thing is I have time to watch TV or read a book or hang out and just sit there. Then I have time to open my Bible with my kids.
Yeah.
And that's, for me personally, it's not everyone, but I always have time to watch TV. And so that kind of convicted me last night when we were talking about this. I was like, oh.
Yeah, there's always time. You just got to make it. And you got to find it. It's there. You just got to make it a priority, like you said. And then that's one of the reasons why we started this podcast, is to help equip parents to do what we're all called to do.
Right.
Is to just kind of maybe use this podcast as like a jumping off point or a starting point. You can talk about the topic we talked about with your kids. It's just one of those things. That's why that's the big reason behind it. There's always time. You just got to find time and be open to using that time and be patient with your kids. Be patient with yourself. There is grace. It's not like if you don't do this every day, then your kid's going to suffer forever.
Right.
It's an important aspect of building your kid's spiritual formation and your own. The family challenge that I have is basically kind of do what I do, is open the Bible app and do the daily refresh as a family. Just sit down 10 minutes before bed, set an alarm, like our kids go to bed at 8:00. So we could set an alarm for 7:50 every day. And then we could all sit in the living room and do a daily refresh. And my kids like to sing, so we may sing a song before bed or something. But just do that. Establish it as a habit. Figure out what works for your family. If 10 minutes before bed doesn't work for your family, try dinner time or try breakfast or try sometime. In the summer is weird. Find a time when you're all together. Make sure you are all together if you can be, and do it. Just establish that rhythm. All right. Thanks for joining us this week. Summer's tough, but keep it going. Find a time, find a rhythm, and do your thing. We'll talk at you next week. See ya.